Hello and welcome to 9394, a music podcast. I'm Travis. Thank you for joining me. I'm really excited to say that this is officially my 1-year anniversary episode. It is my 53rd episode. I do roughly an episode a week, so this is my first full calendar year. And I gotta say, I am so thankful to everyone who has helped me along the way. I can't pretend like doing this isn't a lot of work and a lot of fun, but it wouldn't exist without the help of a lot of people. First of all, you listeners, I gotta thank you first. I mean, where would I be if no one listened to the podcast? I wouldn't have any motivation to do the podcast, frankly, if I didn't have at least a fair listenership. And I do, and I'm thankful for every single one of you. And of course, I'm also very thankful to everyone who has taken the time to come onto the show as a guest, whether it be once or repeats. You all make the show happen. And it means a lot to me that you would contribute and help me along in this way and hopefully have fun yourself and get nostalgic and deeper into an album that you already love. It's really been a joy. It really has been to do this. And I would like to just keep on doing it for years to come. I plan on doing this until I've covered every major album from the era and then some, to the point where the podcast name becomes nonsensical, because I will eventually just get totally out there if I do this the way I want to do it. So, yeah, now that I've said all that, I'm thankful, of course, to today's guest, Mike Brennan. And you want to get nostalgic? How about fucking Candlebox and their self-titled album, Candlebox, from 1993? That's how you get nostalgic, is you put on Candlebox. When's the last time you listened to these guys? Maybe you listen to them all the time. I don't know. But I had listened to them forever. And I was really glad that Mike chose this band and this album. And most of all, that he just chose to come on the podcast, because it's always great to reconnect with him. Check out our conversation.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing, man?
Doing great.
Good.
You look great, man.
Likewise, man. Good to see you. You been well?
I've been, yeah, I think so. It's been a weird year, but I think we're coming out of it, and now I have my own podcast I'm going to be thinking about here pretty soon, and I've never been so excited to do something creative in a long, long time. So yeah, things are turning around.
Yeah, you've posted some about your podcast ideas. It's going to be about failure, right?
Yeah, so the first 10 episodes are going to be, I think, called Slipping Up, and it's going to be about failure. Mm-hmm. And then the whole identity is going to be something like, and I haven't figured this part out yet, I'm working out the bones of it, is going to be something like teaching in the wild or teaching in chaos, something like, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the name of yours?
For 93, 94?
Yeah, you're just talking about 1993. It makes sense.
Yeah, mine was an easy name because I deliberately knew that I wanted to talk about these 2 years and the music they inspired and the music we were listening to during that time. So it just came along really easily, you know?
Yeah, I need that.
Well, if you come up with a name before the end of this podcast, let me know so we can plug you
All right.
to future listeners.
Yeah. I'll rely on you. You name it and I'll just go with it.
You'll figure it out.
I'll run it by you.
Okay. I think you'll make a natural podcast host.
Oh, thank you.
I think you'll do good at it.
Oh, well, we'll find out.
Yeah, there's only one way to find out, right? But it is fun to do. It's, there's a reason why I've been doing it for a few years. It's just a good hobby that you feel like, it takes work and whatnot, the production of it, but it's a different kind of work than, say, writing, where you can write and kind of incorporate that into your podcast depending on how it works, It's just I don't know, it's just, I don't want to say it's low effort, because it takes a lot of work. I put a lot of time into this, but it's a different kind of effort where it doesn't feel as tedious as some of the other projects that I've done in my life.
That's good to hear, because that's what I'm kind of worked up about, is how much time I'm going to have to spend editing. I have ADHD. Part of the whole is ADHD. And so the sitting down to edit, gosh, I get hives just thinking about it.
You want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah.
Well, I always start every episode the exact same way, especially, well, at least when I have a new guest on, which I ask them, how do you and I know one another, Mike?
Yeah, let's do that. What's your first memory of me? Because I was trying to figure out, I know my first, they call them core memories. I know my first core memory of you.
Mm.
I must have met you in sixth grade because I liked you in sixth grade.
Mm-hmm.
And then seventh grade, I don't think I liked anybody. I don't think, no, that's not true. Nobody liked me. And then,
It's a rough age. I was really fucked up in seventh grade myself.
yeah. And well, then eighth grade through high school, I think I became a real person in 11th grade, but from seventh grade through, gosh, through most of 10th grade, I was like a non-person. I was an NPC. I was just going through life. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I know that we were hanging out and friendly because you, me, and Eric Brandstrom hung out quite a bit in high school and like sophomore year, I want to say. Just like around high school, not outside of high school, but we kind of pal around in the halls. Do you remember this at all?
Eric and I were best friends in third grade, and then we fell into some kind of weird politics of our subdivisions because my subdivision was built first, and then his subdivision was built maybe 5 years later. Like it wasn't like it was built long after, but there was this like I want to call it old money and new money, but it was like old poor people and new poor people.
Yeah, we're just talking Osborne Lake. It's not like it was that fancy.
Right. And the people in my subdivision, I had Steve Jandisek for a little while, and then he moved, and then I had nobody. I had nobody my own age. It was all people my brother's age. And then the new sub, and Eric and I were really close in third grade, and then we got in trouble. I think we were doing something stupid, and his mom wouldn't let him be friends with me anymore. I don't know what we were doing. It was like, you have to ask Eric about it. His memory is going to be better of it, and his telling of it is going to be funnier because it's his mom. But yeah, we got in trouble, and I wasn't allowed to hang out with Eric anymore. And then the only other person, you'll remember Joel, there were people my age up in the new sub. I call it the new sub still. You're 40 years old. And the only person I hung out with was Joel, and he moved in ninth or 10th grade, and we became really close. Probably through 10th grade, we were best friends, but people didn't like, I don't know why, people didn't like Joel, and therefore they didn't like me. And then people didn't like me because of my other friends too. So Chad Gibbons broke out, but I wasn't able to follow Chad. People still hated me because I was hanging out with I was hanging out with some friends that people didn't like. And I think that's when it got negative between me and you. So I was just telling my students, you're a teacher too, by the way, right?
I am, yeah.
Do your kids know about the podcast?
I do everything in my power to make it so that they don't know about the podcast.
Oh, really? Like, I immediately told my kids, I'm like, go look this up. I'm going to be on this episode. I can't wait to talk about it. But I was talking a little bit about how I knew you, and the kids think it's funny that I felt like there was a time there that you were a bully. You were pretty mean, but it wasn't you. It was a couple other people. And then Chad being friends with the group kind of quashed it a little bit. It didn't totally fix it. And then I stopped caring about what other people thought about me, but it wasn't until like junior year. And then you and I think we're in Mr. Monday's TV production class together.
I believe so.
And we should have been best friends at that point.
But we weren't.
Oh, we weren't. Yeah. Well,
I don't remember hating you by any stretch
good.
No, not at all. And as you've already pointed out, and as Chad pointed out on the episode that he was on, I could be a bit of a bully in high school. I wish, not physically, but I could fuck with people a lot. And my friends group, we definitely, like as a crowd, would kind of like surround people and be kind of mean to them. And in junior year in particular, and senior year probably. And I remember calling you names, but like in a way that was like the same way I did to my other friends.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like kind of fucking with you, but also like being mean, but like in a way that friends are mean to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was going to actually ask about this in the podcast was how much did we learn from all that? Because my friends from high school, they're not my friends. They're my friends now. And like the reason this came up was I was telling my kids how we reconnected and we went bowling together. And the kids thought that was hilarious. And I was like, we had such a great conversation about just all kinds of things. But that made me realize we should have been a lot closer. And it was me, like you and I don't know how many people I want to name by name, but there were certain people that were just too quick. And I wasn't funny yet. I wasn't funny until 12th grade. I didn't realize I had a sense of humor. But all before that, I was just some idiot. And today's episode is really going to like kind of drive home. I have the taste of a basic bitch. Like I'm a Swiftie, and it's gonna come out. It might as well come out early in the episode. I just have the taste of a basic bitch because one of the reasons I love this podcast so much.
Well, thank you.
It's bringing up really great conversations. Now that I've been thinking about it since we first talked about doing this episode, I was thinking, gosh, why Candlebox? Because I haven't listened to it really since maybe college. I listen to a couple songs every now and again just to like kind of bring me back and whatever.
Sure.
But it's not a band I would have just started listening to again. It's too loud. It's too angry. It makes me angry because it brings up all the bad nostalgia from high school. But this ties, it does. I promise it ties together. I didn't have friends in high school. I had 5.
Yeah.
One came late, so I had 4. I won't use last names here. My closest friend for the longest time was Tom. We met in kindergarten. And Tom had his own anger thing, so people just didn't like Tom. And then he became friends with a couple other people, and so those friends were my friends. But Tom introduced me to Chad, and Chad and I became really close. And then I didn't really have any other friends. I don't know, I must have pulled away from everybody. I think I was getting angry, but I was sad. I remember being just depressed all the time, and Candlebox just kind of reminds me how depressed I was. I should have gotten more therapy. I probably should have taken medication. I didn't do any of that stuff.
Well, that stuff wasn't really on our radar in the 90s in the same way that it is now. Like the idea that like I'm a distraught teenager, like that was just like, well, these years suck. Get through it. And that was kind of what we did. I remember being in 7th grade and 2 of my like best friends at the time, Mike Neal and Courtney Kostrick, who went on to become Fish Guts. This is, I don't know if you're aware. So I remember like being in class with them and they were like making a joke about me, like that was intended for me to hear it, like because they were fucking with me, but as my friends. And I remember being like, fuck you guys. And I think it's kind of like a similar thing that happened with you and me. Like we were deliberately fucking with you, which wasn't nice, but it was definitely a lot more like, it wasn't coming from a place of like that we hated you. Like it was just kind of like, it was more like brotherly, kind of like, hey, we get a big reaction when we do this, so let's keep doing it. And because we're kids. I don't know. I teach high school now, as you do. I don't get to see, I mean, I see the kids interact. I don't get to see them interact without like the observer effect. You know what I mean? But it does seem to me like I see a lot less of that kind of sniping that was maybe unique to our friend, my friends group or high school. I can't like blame the whole 90s on that kind of shit.
No, it comes back to like the reaction. I remember all of this makes sense because I do know myself. I had a temper, man. I had the worst Irish temper. I thought I was quiet, but I think people pushed me to a limit that like I would just start maybe swearing and cussing people out and like look like a dumbass. And I wasn't smart enough to like get past any of that because of, I don't know what, part of this thinking about who I was in 1994. Candlebox came out with their album in 93, but I didn't start listening to them until late 94 probably.
Yeah. Was it the singles that got you into it?
Yeah. So Far Behind was and it's still Far Behind. I love that song.
It's a huge song.
It would be my most overrated if it wasn't still my favorite.
So that's your favorite song on the album?
Oh yeah. So back then it definitely was, and today it probably still is, except that maybe it's Blossom now. And Blossom is my most underrated song. I'm sorry to like jump ahead, but like
that's fine.
I know we're talking about it.
I'm sorry to say that Blossom was my choice for least good on the album.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Still wash your face, pale on misty white, color found your eyes seemed ever changing in my mind. Oh, colors bleed to red as I kiss your face. Want to tell you I love you every day, yeah, as we grow. I know now, yes I know now, it's all on my own. And I know now.
Wow.
Although I will say I had a pretty hard time picking a least favorite song on this album because this is an extremely even album. Yeah, there are songs that stand out, but overall I feel like they're all really well matched. I wouldn't say I picked Blossom at random, mostly just because I guess I was kind of between that and Mother's Dream, but mostly because of like the punctuation error of Mother's Dream annoys me.
Yeah.
And like, that's not a good reason to say it's my least favorite song. So I went with Blossom just because I guess I don't always have a ton of affection for like overly romantic rock songs,
Sure.
which Blossom is, but I couldn't say it's a bad song.
Okay, that's interesting. When I think about who they are as a rock band versus who they are as a grunge band, makes me change my mind about certain songs.
Yeah.
Because the later part of the album, I remember skipping a lot of songs. Like I used to skip Arrow, but now I really love Arrow. Rain didn't do a lot for me, but I like Rain fine.
Rain was one back in the day that like I remember, I think it was at the end of the first side of the cassette or like the beginning of the second side of the cassette or something. I remember like having to like work around Rain and not liking it. Now I'm like, I find it really bluesy and cool and like epic almost because they do so many different genre bending different things throughout it.
Seen my baby fly away. Sugar don't go. She said I don't be treating her right by the things I say. Sugar don't go. I feel I'll be left alone. And I'll cry.
That's probably their most playful song, an innovative song on the album. I'm like, well, no shit, I should have latched onto that one earlier. But, you know, again, 13-year-olds.
Well, the thing that's wild about that song is it's almost 7 minutes. You can do a lot. That's 3 songs now. That's like 4 songs now.
It's a long song.
It's great. You're right. You can do so many things with a song like that because you're kind of taking people on a little bit of a journey in terms of playing around with genre and telling the story. I don't know. Rain is a fun song. I have a hard time listening to it all the way through because our attention spans are like wildly less than that at this point. 7 minutes is like a commitment.
It shifts gears a few places, which I guess is what keeps me locked in.
Yeah.
Sugar girl, you leave me alone in the bed, your bags, you got your plane on the road. I said, why'd you leave, you gotta leave me alone. I'm feeling sad, you gotta back out. Baby, you treat me, my life, and I take my mind, I lose it. What I have is what I have, is what I give to you. And I feel I'm gonna be
You know, going back to your point about them as a grunge band or them as a rock band. So they are from Seattle, right? They were signed, I don't know for sure, but I would guess in 92 because that's when You and Far Behind were first recorded.
Yeah.
And then the album was recorded like in 93 and released in 93.
Right.
And coming out of Seattle as a breakthrough band in 1993, people were calling everything grunge at that time. They were calling Mother Love Bone grunge, and that was one of my big takeaways listening to Candlebox this time, is it made me think of Mother Love Bone quite a bit because they're both bands that are from Seattle that are not grunge in almost any way, shape, or form. They're just pretty straightforward rock and roll. They're just not exactly like the hair band stuff that maybe influenced them, but is not exactly what they're playing.
Yeah. I don't know who gets to define this stuff because like Soundgarden is another one of these bands. I don't know if I'd put them with grunge, but they have a lot of similarities to Candlebox. Whereas like when I think of like, this is a painful part of the conversation. When I think about like Nirvana and Candlebox, I say painful because you might have been in this class. I was trying to figure out if you were in, I wonder if it was Miss Arisom's class. I don't know who taught pre-algebra. It was pre-algebra. And it might have been either 8th grade pre-algebra. Yeah, it must have been 8th grade.
Well, I took pre-algebra in 8th grade and 9th grade. That's how good I am at math. So it could have been me.
We're twins. This is what I mean. We should have been way closer. I just wasn't smart enough at the time. But I wasn't smart in any category. There wasn't like a subject I was good at. It was all pre-algebra, like 2 years in a row. It might as well have been like Western Civ 2 years in a row. Like I wasn't good at anything. It doesn't matter what it was. The conversation I remember was, everybody I think had this conversation. Do you prefer Nirvana or do you prefer Pearl Jam?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I love this podcast so much is because it reminded me of like how I got into music in the first place. Like I was listening to Billy Joel with my dad, and my parents are divorced, so my dad had custody on the weekends, and it was Billy Joel.
And I still love Billy Joel.
Yeah, what's not to love about Billy Joel?
So you were listening to kind of like more like adult, contemporary, whatever, like that kind of stuff as a kid.
Oh, no. My dad had the better taste in music. With my mom, I was listening to Neil Diamond and Rod Stewart, and maybe Enya was the coolest person she was listening to, because I love Enya now.
All right.
Yeah. No, do you know what that did to my social? Let me tell you what that did to my social life.
Good things, I'm sure.
Yeah, great. When your younger brother, my brother's 3 years younger than me, when it's your younger brother getting you into new, cooler music, you know that something went wrong in your life. Really, there's just no other way to say that. So we went out and we bought cassettes for, I think it was Stone Temple Pilots and REM were the first two cassettes I bought. And Offspring was the first CD I bought.
Okay.
And it made me think, gosh, this episode is so much fun to talk about. Because I was thinking about the commitment to music. Like, I have Spotify now, so I can just download whatever the heck I want.
Right.
And I pay for it, so I don't have to listen to any commercials. It's amazing. It's a different way of doing music now than going to a store, an album store. I'm flipping through albums and like hanging out in people's basements. The only way you're going to find new music was either the radio, which they were only going to play like Far Behind and not Blossom or not Arrow or whatever.
They play You and Far Behind pretty much with the main singles.
Yeah. Well, depending on if you were listening to 89X or 96.3, and I told you I was a basic bitch. I was listening to The Planet 96.3.
I was an 8NX guy.
Yeah, everybody else was. Literally everybody else was. Why wouldn't you be? That was the better...
It was.
Yeah. No.
Funny.
Anyway, my brother got me into new bands. And so Candlebox is one of these things where I have a lot of fun talking about this because Candlebox was the first thing I bought because I liked it. It was kind of new to me, and I bought it based on Far Behind, but then I loved the whole album. And so I would just kind of lay on my bed depressed, listening to the whole thing, and all the emotions got to be felt around me without me having to like actually be that angry.
Yes, that was the age. Laying in your room, listening to music and not playing on your phone, not like playing a video game, not doing anything, just sitting there and absorbing the music and being, emo before emo really existed as a genre.
Yeah.
But you mentioned basements. This album really takes me back to Corey Worley's basement. Did you know Corey?
I did.
Okay, because I know he moved schools, but I remember being in his basement before he moved and listening to this album and just like talking about it. Because if I wasn't like in my room alone listening to an album, that was one of the things that would connect me to my friends group, would be like talking about albums that we loved. I remember like not everyone loved Candlebox in my crew back then, but I remember like me and Corey did, and we were like, okay, well, we can talk about it because our friends kind of like give us a little bit of a hard time, which that brings me to my next point, which is that they did kind of become a band that people didn't necessarily be like, I'm a huge Candlebox fan, right? They didn't have the same staying power necessarily as, say, some of the other bands that came out around that time.
Right.
despite being as big as a lot of them. But they kind of went the way of Silverchair and that kind of stuff, where they were big, really big for a minute, and now you don't really hear people talk about them that much.
Yeah, that's true. They broke up. I'm trying to remember when the first person left, and it was like it kind of changed the identity. So Lucy was the next album, right?
Yeah, 95.
Yeah. I think Kevin Martin started calling himself Candlebox early because he recorded, I don't know if my memory is right about this. I think Kevin Martin had an album before what's now the Candlebox album in 91 or 92.
Okay.
And then he recorded the Candlebox album, which is like what Candlebox is. And then Lucy came out, but I think it was with a different drummer or something. It had a different sound.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I still liked it, but it wasn't with the same like energy that I liked the first album, the 93 album. And then after that, I didn't realize they were still making music. I think they've had different drummers and guitarists and stuff like that for a long time, and they've just been making new albums, and I didn't know anything about that.
They have a new album out. Well, last year in 2023, they released what they're calling their last album.
Yeah, he's talking about retiring now, yeah.
Yeah, which I don't blame him. You can only do that kind of shit for so long, no matter how big your act was. For me, though, to go back to favorite songs in the album, I end up choosing Cover Me.
Cover me, yeah. No, I won't belong. And cover me, yeah. When my stance it stumbles home. And cover me, yeah. We'll trip on through the sands of time. And cover me, 'cause I've been branded, I've lost my mind.
Which I don't remember being a single, but apparently it was. But I really like the feel of the acoustic kind of jam into it and the kind of like rise of the song. It feels a little bit like, well, a lot of this album feels like the 80s.
Yeah.
In a not a bad way.
You can't say that to some people. A lot of people just hate 80s music. It's like as blind as you would hate anything. Like, I don't understand that blind hate of like Taylor Swift or whatever, but like...
Me neither.
People don't like 80s music, but no, you're right. It has that 80s feel where it's like, I like the experimental stuff of the 80s, and I like what it gave birth to in the 90s, and then the 90s thing kind of stuck. Like, our teenagers that we teach still love 90s music.
They do.
I didn't realize that was a thing. That's like listening to your parents' music.
When we were in high school, I mean, our friends did. I mean, I don't know about you, but I knew a lot of people that, huge Zeppelin and Pink Floyd fans and that kind of stuff. And I was like, find your own generation's music. But now I'm thrilled when I see someone like wearing a Nirvana shirt or something like that who's young. I'm like, okay, the kids are all right.
Yeah, the kids are going to be okay.
Yeah.
Cover Me is one of the songs that I would go to first sometimes. And we were in, I can't remember my... Ringvelsky, maybe? What was my social studies teacher's name?
In 9th grade, it would have been Ringvelsky, probably.
Yeah. I had him. It must have been an American Lit course, and he was teaching us about the Depression and Brother, Can I Spare a Dime as one of those, like, phrases that came out of that. And that's, like, one of the key phrases in the song, and I was like, oh, things are connecting. Like, I didn't realize people would pull phrases from other things and that. I don't know how dumb I was, but that's an indication of how dumb I might have been.
Well, you're 13, 14 years old. Everyone's dumb at that age.
Yeah. Well, and then He Calls Home. Oh, I think it's He Calls Home where that line is.
That's my underrated song, is He Calls Home. Which, I think that song is the one that has that line. This is a song after Cover Me. They pair well together. They're a good way to end the album. It's kind of like you have this big rock album, and you have this kind of like chill couple songs at the end.
Right.
Well, I see him every day in that blanket that he calls home. Wonder, does he know that his family they left alone? He says, brother, can you spare a dime? I'm down to my last dollar in this life of mine. Say this life of mine gets rough at times. Now I wonder, does he know, does he even care that his family, they're safe at home, and they wonder where, as he's ever searching for. Oh, one blanket on one feet, and he wanders on, and he wonders.
I'm surprised you didn't hate it for the same reason you would have hated Blossom. Like, it feels like it's too different from the rest of the album and unrelated.
He Calls Home.
Yeah, He Calls Home.
I like the story of He Calls Home. It does feel a little bit different, but not in a way that I don't think works, because he's talking about some guy who is struggling. He's struggling with being unhoused, and he's making, I don't know if he's making the assumption or if he knows this about the guy, but that he's got this family that he's like ignoring. And then it shifts perspective, and it starts to be like, he's talking about himself. He himself is unhoused, and he himself is like, you know, I can't help you. I can't help myself. So I like the way that he kind of like, there's a twist in the song, and I like the subject matter. You know, it's not like I don't like songs about girls or love or romance or anything. I'd be missing out on almost all pop music ever. You know what I mean? It's like
right.
It's not like I'm completely against it, but I do respond usually more to songs that are not focused on that kind of stuff. Usually, not necessarily.
Sure. At the time, I liked songs about, how do I phrase this? Like Rage Against the Machine. Like this idea that we had, this was a question I was going to ask you actually. The idea that like there's something to rebel against. My whole identity came from music in 1994 and 5 probably.
Yeah.
And it was music that was coming out earlier than that, but I didn't find until later. And I say find. My brother finally introduced me to some good stuff.
Well, you're talking about a year or so later. It's not like it took you forever.
Yeah. It's not like it was that long, but it was like I got excited about things that people already knew about, and that was dumb.
Well, you felt dumb because you were in high school, and everyone would have gone out of their way to be like, you only just now learned about so-and-so.
Right. But I didn't necessarily like Rage Against the Machine, but I liked everything they stood for, and then Smashing Pumpkins came out with Despite All My Rage, I'm Still Just a Rat in a Cage, and that's what Green Day felt like. Punk music just kind of felt like that, but grunge really felt like that too. And for me, it was Candlebox that just kind of like, it's okay to feel these things. That was where I was at. So it wasn't necessarily like, love ballads or whatever.
Yeah.
I felt like a Gen Xer who like just been given like, here's the world, good luck.
Yeah.
And it's felt like that ever since. And so in a lot of ways, I connect. Me and my girlfriend were just talking about this. She's the same age as me, but she identifies closer to millennial. So she would call herself an elder millennial, and I call myself an exennial. What do you call yourself?
Yeah,
Do you not have an identity?
well, I mean, generational cohorts are such funny things because it's not like there's a standard that everyone adheres to, first of all. You know what I mean? Like there's no like international league of generational cohorts or something like that determines this kind of thing.
Right.
So you were born in 80, right? Like I was?
79, yeah.
Okay. So people born in 79, 80, 81, we're like in this weird kind of space where, as you say, exennial, where we're too old to be millennials and too young to be Generation X. And I think that era drives home the absurdity of generation naming. I mean, I get it. Like you, I'm into history, so like I get like naming epochs and whatnot. But we are not either. So yeah, I guess gun to my head, I'll say exennial. Sometimes I'll say elder millennial.
Okay. Yeah, I don't quite feel like a millennial. The music felt like boy bands and stuff like that, so I just don't feel like a millennial. I feel like something angrier than that. I feel like something angrier than Backstreet Boys.
No, I think that makes sense, especially musically speaking. Well, it was such a disgruntled era, and at 13, 14, 15 years old, you've got all this misplaced rage.
Right.
Anyways, you look at the time, and it's like, what the fuck was there to rebel against? Not a whole bunch. What, you're mad that Bubba got a blowjob in the White House? Like, what are you mad about? You know, there wasn't a ton to be angry about. I mean, I say this as a suburban white male for the record, obviously. Like there wasn't a lot for people like who looked like me, I guess I should say, to be angry about in that era. It's not like there was no injustice, but at the age I was unaware of a lot of the things about society and governance and all that kind of stuff that would fill me with rage later. But I already had the rage in place. It was just really more just like a resistance to authority, I guess. I don't know. And that's something that's going on in this album is that kind of, it's a little disgruntled. It's a little like ragey. It's a little angry, but controlled.
Yeah. Getting closer to the song I want to go out on. I don't want to talk about going out yet, but I do want to go out on either You or He Calls Home. You is so... I love the end of that song where he's just like, he waits the whole song. It's like a perfect F-bomb because he doesn't drop it the whole song. It's not that kind of angry song.
Yeah.
It's not until the very end where he's like, fuck you. And I'm like, yeah. It's like so perfectly placed and well timed.
Yeah, and do you remember it was a single? Do you remember it being edited or anything? 'Cause I don't remember it. I remember it as a single, but I don't remember the ending being like, fuck you, it's for you.
Yeah, that's true. It must have been edited because I don't remember that on any radio cut or anything like that.
But you're right, it really is like a defining moment of the song, and not just because it's the end, because it's about the story that he's telling, which I'm going to tell you the story I hear, and you tell me if it's the same story you hear.
All right.
Because I'm hearing a song about a guy who's in love with a girl, and she's the you for like part of the song. And they get into drugs together, and she ODs, and he's got blood on his hands because he blames himself for her death. And then he twists the you is to like the dealer, and he's like, fuck you to the dealer. Don't come around with your drugs anymore. You know, I'm not into that lifestyle anymore, and all that kind of stuff. And so by the end, like when he's saying fuck you, I think he's saying it to the dealer. Is that what you got?
So I think, yeah, that's like the true story of the song, right? Isn't
Is
that
it?
like,
I don't know the true story of the song.
oh, I don't know. I know that, yeah, Kevin Martin had some, I don't want to speak on behalf of him. I think he got into drugs, then hated what it was doing to his friends and to people he loved.
Mhm.
I thought it was a friendship. I didn't think it was a girlfriend. I thought it was a close friend, but
Okay.
I could be wrong about that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's weird how many of this, it's not weird. It is a little unsettling though. How many songs are about death and how much, like, even Far Behind was inspired by like the death of a friend. So I thought maybe you was inspired by something similar. But you might be right. It might have been a lover. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Someone close to him that he felt responsible for in
Yeah.
some way because they're overdose, it seems like.
Well, and it's weird because I never would have connected to that story. Like I didn't lose anybody to drugs. Haven't really lost anybody until we lost a lot of friends in high school, but they weren't as close as the people I lost when I was in college. And that's when I really started losing people that were really, really close to me. And then I haven't really lost a lot of people since. So I've been a little bit like privileged, I guess, not to lose people. And I never got into like the drug scene.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that kind of kept me from certain social groups was because either they were drinking too much or they were trying new funny business.
I was definitely in the funny business camp in high school, so that could have also been a wedge between us.
Maybe. It wasn't my scene, and I think I lost out on meanings of songs because of that. Like I just wouldn't have known. There's a certain subculture there that I just wouldn't have connected with.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, being white, male, in suburbia, as a 16, 17-year-old, every song was for me and about me.
and how hard it was to be you, right?
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's true.
No wonder I'm nostalgic for the 90s. Shit.
She don't have a name, she don't have a face, never had much of anything. Yes, I see you, never far from grace. She don't have the love, she don't have the time, never had much of anything. Yes, I see you, I want to, you waste me up, you want me on my mind.
If Candlebox fans listen to this, like if they Google, you know, something about Candlebox and they find this episode, I want to make sure that I do justice to the band. I really like the band. I really like Kevin Martin. I really like these songs, and this album was definitely formative for me. There's a secondary part of this that I just can't deny, which is like, it's like the whitest male thing ever.
Which is maybe partly why it kind of became a subject of scorn amongst a lot of like kind of snobby music listeners, including me. Despite owning this cassette and loving this album in like 93, 94, I got rid of the cassette before too long and turned my back on Candlebox. I'm not going to say I held them personally responsible for bands like Creed and Nickelback down the line, but I feel like you could draw a line from like Candlebox and Collective Soul to those bands, and you could draw a line backwards to bands like Extreme and maybe Poison, some other bands I wasn't as into, but I was for a minute. You know, I was into those bands, and then I wasn't because they weren't cool anymore. Because like, you know, I'd aged a whole year, which is a lifetime at that age.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you picked the album because it is monumental to the era, whether people admit it or not. In the same way that I want to get Hootie and the Blowfish cracked review mirror on this podcast, because like whether I'm into it or not isn't really the point. Like it's like from the era, you know what I mean? And so I was ready to talk about Candlebox and be like, yep, this is an important album from the era, blah, blah, blah. It's not for me. It's not that great, blah, blah, blah. But as I keep saying on this show, I ended up listening to the album being like, well, shit, I actually like this a whole bunch. This is a lot better than I remember, which is partly why I had a hard time picking a least favorite song, because if you like the straightforward rock and roll thing that they're doing here, you're going to like the whole album. And if it's not for you, then just get off board. It's not for you.
Yeah, right.
But this album, it really is something, I think, special from that time frame, because there's not a lot of pretense. You know what I mean? For being at the level that they were at and the fame that they got, they were not trying to be grunge. They couldn't help that they were from Seattle. That's probably why they got the attention that they got, or partly why. But they weren't trying to be anything. They were just like, hey, this is the same music we were playing in 89 or whatever. I don't know when they formed, but, you know, whenever. And I think that there's something really honest about it. But at the same time, I do agree with your statement. There is also something exceedingly suburban, white, male about it too.
I really just say that yeah, it's not one of the bands. It should be a guilty pleasure that I like Candlebox, and it's not quite that. I mean, I guess maybe I have no shame because my kids know that I'm a Swiftie. Like, I don't care.
Well, you're wearing a Newsboys shirt right now for the record.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Having guilty pleasures clearly isn't a thing you believe in.
That's hilarious. I had to wear 90s music for my 90s podcast day.
Right on.
Newsboys is another one that was like formative. They were... I don't know if you know. Have you ever listened to a Newsboys album?
I can't say I listened to it all the way through, but I am familiar with them, of course, because they were like the big Christian band, or one of the big Christian bands from there.
Yeah. They had an album that was just total garbage, and for some reason, I was in that youth group culture at the time. Oh man, I got stories to tell. But yeah, Newsboys is another. Yeah, not guilty pleasure. I don't know. It's just nobody really. I don't know about this. I guess this is philosophical. I don't care what people are into, as long as you're into something, I guess. Like if it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's coming from a person that found out. I thank God for Spotify, because now I get to track my year of listening. Mm-hmm. My number one artist was Taylor, and my number one genre, which blows my mind because I don't think I listen to country music, but country music is my number one genre.
Oh. That's so funny.
Yeah.
I love those Spotify things. I learned I was in the 0.1% of listeners for Warren Zevon last year. I'm like, how is that me? How did I do that? Like, I'm in this elite Warren Zevon fan group. I don't know, but I know Spotify, like, I feel kind of goofy talking about Spotify in this podcast sometimes, or like maybe guilty, because I don't like what they've done to artists pay, and I know I'm hypocritical to an extent in using their service, but as you said before, like, how do you turn down having access to every album you want whenever you want it? It's a hard thing to turn down, and it's a big difference between paying $10 a month versus $20 for an album multiple times a month every time I want to listen to a new album.
Yeah, no, but I'm glad you said that, because so here's a part that might get edited out. I don't know if I'll be comfortable with this story.
Okay, I'll edit it out, but go ahead and tell me.
No. You might not have to. It's a funny story. I'm going to end up talking about it in my own podcast, I think.
Okay.
I got fired from Meyer for stealing. I don't know how much I got caught with. It was probably $500 worth of CDs. It was so much.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was something that if they pressed charges, it was going to be juvenile. Like, it was going to be something pretty serious, because it was bad. I got walked out by every secret shopper and security guard. It's like 12 people are kind of walking me out. Oh my gosh.
Perp walk.
Yeah. And my store manager loved me. I was one of the best workers, and I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. It was bad.
I don't know. It's cooler than the time I got fired from the grocery store for stealing mustard. So I think you win.
I guess it's better than that. I don't know. You really needed mustard, man.
I just didn't want to wait in line.
That's funny. That's sad. So the mixtape, we come from a mixtape era, and we were making mixtapes for people. Yeah. I was, because I didn't have friends, but other people were. And we were always stealing music. We were recording it from the radio. I remember, like, writable CDs came out, and that was my new thing. That was awesome.
It's a good point. Spotify's not that different from all that.
It doesn't feel very different from all that. It feels a little bit more like mainstream. Like, you should be able to buy music like this. I remember having my like Apple Music account, and I had to buy each song for $1.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's fine too. I guess I don't realize that artists don't get paid because it seems like they're doing fine.
Well, have you been to a show lately? They're charging $130 just to see them. You know,
Yeah.
That's why, right? That's partly why the cost for a live event has gone up so much, because they don't get the same revenue that they used to.
But people are paying for the tickets.
Yeah, and I think that, like, for me personally, I don't feel as bad about paying that much for a ticket, so long as I can afford it at the time, because I know, like, well, shit, I've been listening to this person, and all I've been doing is paying for them through Spotify. So it's like I feel like I owe them something a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if I was paying 10 cents per listen, which seems like a reasonable thing. Okay, you're going to listen to my song.
Yeah.
Here, you owe me 10 cents. Okay, fine. I'll pay 10 cents. My commute to work would be pretty expensive, but maybe it would only be, it might be $2 a drive. So maybe $2 a drive isn't that bad. That's what I pay in tolls.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a different system that meant that artists got paid better, I would be on board for it. I wouldn't mind paying more for Spotify. It's just the ease of service, you know?
Yeah.
But going back to your point about guilty pleasures, I'd like to say that I too don't believe in guilty pleasures. So long as you're not hurting anybody, whatever brings you pleasure, what's wrong with it, right? I mean, like, you don't have to qualify anything. And the idea that Candlebox should be a guilty pleasure, I think it kind of points to the kind of conflicted legacy that they have as a band, and that people don't have the respect and appreciation for them that maybe we would have expected when this album came out in '93.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to say about them before we move on to the end of the show?
I'm really disappointed Blossom is your least favorite song on the album. Blows my mind, man.
I apologize.
No, don't apologize to me. Apologize to humanity.
I apologize, humanity.
No, I'm just kidding.
I had to pick one, you know. It was either that or Mother's Dream, like I said. So if you want, I can pretend that I switched it to Mother's Dream.
Did we talk about most overrated? Most overrated for me was Change.
I like Change.
I like it. It just is like way ahead in terms of downloads and listens to Blossom. So I thought it was underrated. Change is
overrated. I like that Change is such an unabashed rock song.
As I stand here, I ponder greater things. You're no longer a part of your lover's dreams. So much for your common complication. So much for your constant desperation for what's to come. It's all been
I think it's the most like rock and roll song on the album, maybe, and I like that about it. Yeah, I never did the overrated category, although sometimes there's definitely reason for that. Although if I was picking overrated on this album, I'd probably pick Far Behind, because I think that You and Cover Me were better singles.
Far Behind is... That intro is still the best thing I like listening to.
Now maybe did I mean to treat you bad, yeah, but I did it anyway. And then maybe some would say your life was sad, yeah, but you lived it anyway.
Like when I hear it at like a bar or something, and I don't know why breweries play 90s music. I love that. When I hear it, I go straight back to, man, that's awesome.
It's white people catnip. It's like putting on the beginning of Journey, Don't Stop Believing.
Oh, I'm not going to be able to listen to it anymore. I think you just killed it for me, man.
No, I mean it in a good way.
No, there's no good way. People hate Journey.
I love Journey.
I'm not going to be on anybody's band, but man, Journey.
I love Journey. And I mean that, I do. I mean it in a good way. It's an iconic, I mean...
Yeah,
whether it's a little overrated, it is super iconic from that era. And as soon as those opening notes come on,
a Journey song when you hear it, like,
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they still play Neil Diamond at Fenway Park. So as a Red Sox fan, yeah, am I gonna sing along to Sweet Caroline? Fuck yes.
Exactly. All right. So I always wrap the show up talking about stuff that has something to do from the era, usually. So it's 1993. It's the summer of 93. You're going to go see a show. Where do you think would be the best place to see a show in Southeast Michigan in the summer nights of 1993?
In the summer nights, 1993, Candlebox or any band?
Any band.
Oh. Man, I guess it's got to be Pine Knob, right?
Of course it's Pine Knob. All right, good. That was the right answer. So I've got 5 bands here for you that all played in summer of 1993.
Oh, all right. I like this.
And they're all bands that I believe, now I don't know what Candlebox's influences specifically are, but based on what I have heard here, I feel like there's, like I kind of mentioned, there's some 80s bands that I think were probably big impacts on them.
Yeah, right.
So I've got 5 shows, opener and headliner.
Ooh.
You tell me which one you'd most like to see if you had a time machine to go back to Pine Knob in the summer of 93.
Good question, man.
All right. So in late June of 93 at Pine Knob, we could be standing outside. It's a big outdoor arena for those unfamiliar. It's like the classic, every like major city's got the big outdoor venue.
Yeah.
So we could have seen Van Halen with Vince Neil. He was fresh out of Motley Crue at that point, so I don't know if he was playing if he had an album. It was only like a year since he left Motley Crue.
Right.
So Van Halen and Vince Neil in June. In July, on July 23rd, we had Def Leppard with Ugly Kid Joe opening, which I feel like Ugly Kid Joe and Candlebox could have easily played a show together or a tour together. You ever get into them?
Yeah. Yeah, what was the song? I can't think of them right now.
I know that they did a cover of something that was like their big hit. Cats in the Cradle, I think they did a big cover of that or some shit. I don't remember what it was. But they were really big for a minute, and I really liked them for a hot second, right about the time I liked Candlebox.
Huh. Yeah. All right. So far, Van Halen might beat them just because I like the guitar solos in Van Halen a little bit.
Okay, yeah, and that was a Van Hagar period, by the way. That was like the Right Here, Right Now tour.
This
yeah. John Bon Jovi played with Extreme on July 27th, which seems like a natural pairing. My first concert that I ever went to see that was like for me, that I wanted to go to, I wasn't dragged to, was John Bon Jovi. A couple years before this.
I thought you were cooler than that.
You would think. But I like to tell people it was Dinosaur Jr., but that was actually a couple years later.
There's a big difference between those guys. I love Bon Jovi. I can't. Yeah. Bon Jovi's fine.
Okay. And then Foreigner played in August of that year with a band called the Motor City Rockers that I'm not familiar with, but I feel like I need to check them out as a Detroiter.
Yeah.
And then REO Speedwagon the night after that, August 20th, REO Speedwagon played and Cheap Trick opened up. So your options again are Van Halen with Vince Neil, Def Leppard with Ugly Kid Joe, John Bon Jovi with Extreme, Foreigner with Motor City Rockers, or REO Speedwagon, Cheap Trick.
Oh, gosh. It might be REO Speedwagon with Cheap Trick. I love Cheap Trick. And I love REO Speedwagon, too.
Yeah, I love REO. I should say, I really like both those bands. It's not like I sit around listening to them a ton.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my choice as well, would be REO Speedwagon and Cheap Trick. I feel like that'd be a kick-ass show.
I think next would be Van Halen, but man, that's a tough grouping. Bon Jovi? No, but it would be Cheap Trick. It would be REO Speedwagon with Cheap Trick would be a good concert. I think that'd be fun.
I think he chose wisely. I mean, any of those would have been fun, to be honest, but I think that would be the most up my alley, for sure. They'd all make for good people watching in 1993, I'm sure.
That's true. I gotta tell you, though, if it was winter, I think my choice might switch to Van Halen. I think they'd play a
stadium indoors.
Stadium pretty well.
Yeah, they're definitely more of a stadium band, probably, but...
Yeah, if I'm hanging out on the blanket, because I was poor, I'm hanging out on the blanket
in the lawn, right?
In the grass. It's going to be Cheap Trick for sure.
Yeah, I think the tickets were like $10 or something like that for the lawn, so that would have been where I would have been, too.
I worked at a venue a lot like Pine Knob, and I was doing backstage security. So one of the saddest moments, it was great. It was a great concert. Eddie Vedder put on a really good show. But Eddie Vedder came out, balding and old and just wearing like my dad's clothes. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that like people get older.
People, yeah, they age.
They age. Yeah, Eddie Vedder was like clean and Not even wearing a flannel. I was like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, that was well past his days of being like the flannel clad around the waist, long-haired dude. Well, Mike, thanks for coming on the show, man. I had a lot of fun getting ready for this. I had a lot of fun talking with you about it. I hope you come back.
Yeah, thanks. I would love to come back. Yeah, it's great. I love hanging out with you, man.
Likewise, dude.
I'll have to see you when I come back to Michigan. We'll hang out.
Yes, do. When you come back into Michigan, hit me up. We'll get a beer and shoot the shit. We'll talk about your podcasting endeavors and how that's going for you.
I can't wait. This is a lot of fun because it's a good planning for my own thing. So when I have questions about like microphones and how to work everything, I hope you don't mind if I reach out to you.
Anytime, dude. Anytime. Absolutely. All right, man. Enjoy your Saturday. Great seeing you.
Good seeing you too, Travis. Take care.
You too, buddy. So I said on the show that I had taken pre-algebra twice in high school, and that's not true. I took it 3 times. Well, one of those times was actually middle school, and then 9th and 10th grade. Anyway, just for the sake of honesty, I am not good at math. But Mike is good at podcasting, and I appreciate him coming on the show and spending some time with me. Had a lot of laughs, had a good time. I really appreciate Mike's vulnerability. You know that he must be a good teacher. He's very open and gives of himself, which I think is required in a teacher, in my professional opinion. Mike reached out because he wanted to be on the show. You too could be on the show if you want to, or maybe you know somebody that you think would be a good guest on the show, someone in your life who, you know, is an addict for this era of music. Fun fact, Better Than Ezra released the album Deluxe that had the single Good on it in 1993 through Swell Records. And it was 2 years later in 1995 that Elektra picked it up and released it again, and they had their big hit with Good. Maybe you want to come on the show and talk about this album. Why not? It's a classic. I mean, it's a fucking... the band... What can I say about this one-hit wonder? I don't know. That's why I want you to come on. I can't think of anything. Maybe you've got history with this album. Or some other album from the era. Like I said before, every time I do this part of the show, I am not super picky. I just want new guests. I want old guests. There's people that I would like to come back still. So if you've been on the show and you haven't heard from me in a while, I don't like reaching out too much to people and be like, hey, do this thing. Take hours of your life to do this thing. We're in a couple hours at the most. It's like an hour. We record for like an hour. My email address is 9394podcast@gmail.com. I am on Facebook. I don't really do any other social media, and I don't do Facebook that much. So the email 9394podcast@gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of me. Please rate and review the show, follow, subscribe, do all that stuff. This is the obligatory, fine print at the end of a podcast. You could stop listening by now if you haven't already. You can hit stop. Goodbye. 9394, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.